My name is Abigail Parker. I am 36 years old, and being a single mom to my son Noah is everything to me. For 5 consecutive years, my family has skipped his birthday for various convenient excuses. Each year, I watched his little face fall with disappointment, wondering why his grandparents and cousins never showed up for him. Then, just 4 days after his 8th birthday party that they missed again, my mom texted demanding $2,700 for the annual family cabin trip. It was like a slap across my face. I decided right then that I was done being the doormat of this family. Like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted, and let me know where you are watching from. I want to know who will support my decision. The Parker family dynamics have always been complicated, but I never realized how toxic they were until I had Noah. My mother, Deborah, is the undisputed matriarch and social director of our family. She plans every holiday, coordinates every gathering, and expects everyone to fall in line with her vision of what our family should be. She is a petite woman with impeccably styled silver hair who speaks in a way that makes commands sound like suggestions. My father, Richard, built a successful construction company from the ground up and has the financial comfort to show for it. He is physically imposing but emotionally absent, deferring to my mother in all family decisions while focusing on business. My older brother, Andrew, married Elizabeth 12 years ago. They live in a sprawling 5-bedroom house in the affluent part of town, courtesy of his executive position at a pharmaceutical company that my father helped him secure. They have 2 children, Mason 10 and Isabella 7. From the moment they were born, these kids became the center of the Parker family universe. My younger sister Jennifer and her husband Michael represent what my parents consider the ideal family unit. Jennifer followed in our father's entrepreneurial footsteps and opened a successful boutique with financial backing from our parents. Michael comes from old money and works as a corporate attorney. Their daughter Grace, now 8, is treated like royalty at every family gathering. She receives the most expensive gifts, the most attention, and has her every accomplishment celebrated with professional photography sessions and catered parties. Then there is me, always feeling like an afterthought. I was the middle child who never quite fit the mold my parents created. I chose art school instead of business school. I married a man they disapproved of. And I had the audacity to still need my family after my marriage fell apart. Growing up in the Parker household meant understanding an unwritten hierarchy early on. Andrew was being groomed to take over the family business, so his academic achievements and sports victories were celebrated lavishly. Jennifer was the baby of the family, adorable and precocious, who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I was just Abigail, the quiet one who drew pictures and read books. My straight-A report cards were met with cursory praise, while Andrew bringing home a B+ in mathematics warranted a family dinner celebration. When I won a statewide art competition in high school, my parents skipped the ceremony because it conflicted with one of Jennifer's dance recitals. This pattern continued through college when they missed my graduation, because Andrew was closing on his first house that weekend. The family calendar has always revolved around Andrew and Jennifer. Thanksgiving must be scheduled around Andrew's work retreats. Christmas morning must accommodate Jennifer's in-laws' visiting schedule. Even casual Sunday dinners were planned based on when it was most convenient for them, with the assumption that I would simply adjust my schedule accordingly. I work as a freelance graphic designer, which gives me the flexibility to care for Noah while maintaining a career. I built my client base from scratch after years of hard work, late nights, and constant hustle. On good months, we are comfortable. On bad months, I dip into my meager savings to make ends meet. Before I set firm boundaries, my family never seemed to understand that I cannot simply take days off without planning ahead, or that last-minute babysitting requests meant lost income for me. My marriage to Thomas lasted just 3 years. We met in my final year of college, married quickly, and had Noah within the first year. The cracks began showing almost immediately. Thomas resented my family's lukewarm reception to him, though he never made much effort himself. When Noah turned 1, Thomas announced he was not cut out for fatherhood or marriage and walked out. The divorce was quick, but painful. He signed away his parental rights in exchange for not paying child support, moved to Seattle, and effectively disappeared from our lives. No birthday calls, no Christmas cards, no child support checks. just complete silence as if Noah had never existed. Since then, I have worked tirelessly to build a stable, loving home for my son. I took on extra freelance projects to afford our modest two-bedroom apartment in a good school district. I researched child development books to better understand how to support a child through the absence of a father. I created routines and traditions just for the two of us to give Noah a sense of security and normalcy. Noah is the kind of child who notices everything. He has my auburn hair and Thomas's green eyes, a combination that makes strangers stop us in grocery stores to comment on how striking he looks. But it is his mind that truly amazes me. At 8, he already reads at a 6th grade level and can explain the water cycle or photosynthesis with the precision of a tiny professor. Science fascinates him endlessly. His room is filled with model solar systems, chemistry kits, and nature journals, where he meticulously documents the bugs and birds he observes in our small backyard. He also inherited my artistic tendencies. When he is not conducting experiments, he is drawing elaborate spaceships or designing inventions in his sketchbook. He is sensitive in ways that sometimes break my heart, like when he saves half his dessert because he thinks I might want some later, or when he makes birthday cards for the grandparents who consistently disappoint him. From the beginning, Noah and I formed a special bond that went beyond the typical mother-child relationship. We were a team partners navigating the world together. I taught him to tie his shoes, and he taught me to see magic in ordinary moments, like finding perfectly symmetrical leaves or watching storm clouds gather. On difficult days when freelance work dried up or bills piled high, his small hand in mine reminded me why every struggle was worthwhile. In those early years after Thomas left, I made countless attempts to integrate Noah into the extended family. I brought him to Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, and family barbecues. I showed up with homemade dishes and small gifts, hoping to ease our way into the tight family circle. I emailed photos of Noah's first steps, first words, and first day of preschool. I created photo books of his milestones as Christmas presents for the grandparents. The response was always tepid at best. While my parents cooed appropriately over the photos, they rarely asked follow-up questions about his development or interests. At family gatherings, they spent most of their time doting on Mason, Isabella, and Grace. When presents were distributed, the three cousins would unwrap mountains of carefully selected toys, while Noah received gift cards or generic items clearly purchased as afterthoughts. Still, I kept trying. I believed family was important, that Noah deserved to know his grandparents, uncle, aunt, and cousins. I made excuses for their behavior, telling myself they were just busy or needed time to bond with him. But the signs were there from the beginning that Noah was not being embraced into the family fold with the same enthusiasm as his cousins. The promises of playdates, movie outings, and special grandparent time never materialized. Plans were made and broken repeatedly until Noah learned not to get excited when I mentioned visiting his grandparents. His small face would remain carefully neutral, already protecting himself from the disappointment that experience had taught him would likely follow. When Noah was approaching his 4th birthday, his obsession with dinosaurs was at its peak. He could pronounce Triceratops and Velociraptor better than some adults, and he carried a small plastic T-Rex with him everywhere. For months he talked about having a dinosaur birthday party, planning the games and decorations with the seriousness of a wedding planner. I wanted to make his day special, so I saved for months to afford the party. I transformed our small apartment into a prehistoric wonderland with papier-mâché volcanoes, dinosaur footprints leading from the front door to the living room, and a homemade fossil dig in plastic bins filled with sand. I stayed up until 2 in the morning the night before, painstakingly decorating a 3-tiered dinosaur cake with fondant dinosaurs I had learned to make from YouTube tutorials. His special gift that year was a museum-quality dinosaur encyclopedia that cost nearly a week of grocery money, but I knew it would light up his face in a way that would make the sacrifice worthwhile. I wanted him to feel celebrated, treasured, and important, especially since his father had made no attempt to contact him since leaving. I sent invitations to my family a full month in advance. I called my mother personally to make sure the date worked with everyone's schedule. Noah was especially excited about showing his collection of dinosaur figurines to his cousins and teaching them all the scientific names he had memorized. The response from my family seemed promising at first. My mother assured me they would all be there. She even suggested I order extra food, because in her words, Richard tends to get hungry at these events. My brother Andrew sent a text confirming they would attend and asking what kinds of gifts Noah might like. Jennifer mentioned she had already purchased a present that Noah would absolutely love. I allowed myself to hope that this would be a turning point, that my family was finally ready to embrace Noah as one of their own. Noah counted down the days on his dinosaur calendar, putting a big red X through each day that passed. 5 more sleeps until my party, 4 more sleeps, 3 more sleeps. The day before the party, my phone rang. It was my mother. Something in her tone immediately set off alarm bells in my mind. "Abigail, dear, I have some disappointing news," she began, her voice carrying that particular blend of regret and finality I had come to recognize. "Your father has an important company event tomorrow, and we are all expected to attend. You know how these corporate functions are, family attendance shows support." My heart sank as she continued explaining how Andrew and Jennifer needed to be there too for networking purposes, and of course the children should come along to make a good impression on the company partners. She promised they would make it up to Noah with an even bigger celebration later. I knew this bigger celebration would never materialize. It was the same promise made and broken countless times before. I also knew from years of experience that arguing would be pointless. My mother had made her decision, and the rest of the family would fall in line as they always did. After hanging up, I sat on my kitchen floor and allowed myself 5 minutes to cry. Just 5 minutes of grief and anger before pulling myself together for Noah's sake. He deserved a happy birthday regardless of who showed up. When I told him that evening, I tried to frame it positively. I explained that Grandma and Grandpa had an important work event, but that his friends from preschool would still be coming. His little face fell momentarily before he nodded with a maturity no 4-year-old should possess. "It is okay, Mommy. They are probably very busy," he said, patting my hand as if he were the parent comforting me. I spent the night making frantic calls to parents of Noah's classmates, inviting additional children to fill the gap left by my family's absence. Most agreed on such short notice, touched by the desperation they likely heard in my voice. The party itself went better than expected. The preschool children were delighted by the dinosaur theme, and their parents were warm and supportive. Noah beamed when everyone sang happy birthday, and he carefully opened each gift with genuine appreciation. Still, throughout the day, he would occasionally glance at the door when someone new arrived, and I knew he was looking for his grandparents. When everyone had gone home, and Noah was in bed clutching his new dinosaur encyclopedia, I scrolled through social media to post photos of the day. That is when I saw it. My sister Jennifer had posted pictures from that day. There was no corporate event. The entire family was at a water park celebrating Mason's first soccer game. There were photos of my parents cheering from the sidelines, of Jennifer and Michael buying ice cream for all 3 cousins, of everyone splashing in the wave pool afterward. The caption read, "Nothing better than family day supporting our little soccer star. I felt physically ill." The betrayal cut deep, not just for me but for my innocent son who had done nothing to deserve such treatment. They had not even bothered to create a convincing lie. They simply did not prioritize Noah enough to attend his birthday, but they expected me to accept their excuse without question. A week later, I called my mother, determined to address what happened. I kept my voice level as I mentioned Noah's birthday party and how disappointed he had been. "Abigail, you need to understand that a little birthday party cannot take precedence over important family events," she replied dismissively. Mason's first soccer game was a milestone. "But why lie about a corporate event?" I asked, struggling to keep the hurt from my voice. "We did not want to make you feel bad," she said, as if the lie had been a kindness rather than another wound. "You know how sensitive you can be about these things." I wanted to scream, to demand why my child was less important than my brother's. Why a 4-year-old's birthday meant nothing, while a 6-year-old's first soccer game warranted a full family outing. Instead, I swallowed my anger. I was not ready for the confrontation that would inevitably follow, not ready to potentially cut ties with my family. And most importantly, I did not want Noah to sense the tension and blame himself as children often do. So I said goodbye politely and began to adjust my expectations. My family had shown me where their priorities lay, and Noah's feelings were clearly not among them. For Noah's 5th birthday, I was determined to avoid another last-minute disappointment. I planned the celebration almost 2 months in advance and consulted my parents about the date before setting anything in stone. They assured me that July 15th would work perfectly for everyone. Noah, now obsessed with ocean life, wanted an under-the-sea themed party. He talked excitedly about showing his grandfather the shark tooth he had purchased with his own allowance money at a museum gift shop. Again, I stretched my budget to create something special. I painted an ocean mural on our living room wall that took 3 weekends to complete. I found a local baker who offered me a discount on a spectacular cake shaped like a coral reef in exchange for designing her new business cards. I even arranged for a touch tank rental from a local aquarium educator where the children could safely interact with starfish and sea urchins. The invitations went out, responses came in, and Noah added stickers to his ocean calendar, counting down the days. 3 days before the party, my phone rang. My mother again. Deborah and Richard had suddenly come down with a terrible case of the flu, she explained. They were just too ill to attend, and of course they did not want to risk getting Noah or any of the other children sick. She sounded convincingly regretful as she assured me they would send a nice gift instead. By that evening, Andrew and Jennifer had both texted their regrets as well. The children might catch whatever their grandparents had, they could not risk it. I accepted their excuses at face value, disappointing as they were, and focused on making the party wonderful for Noah with the guests who would actually show up. 2 days after the party, I saw the truth on my brother's wife Elizabeth's Instagram page. A photo of my parents looking perfectly healthy at an upscale restaurant with Andrew, Elizabeth, Jennifer, and Michael. The caption read, "Lovely adults night out while the kids have their sleepover." There was no flu. There was no concern about contagion. They simply had better plans that day and did not consider Noah's birthday important enough to keep their commitment. Noah's 6th birthday brought an even more painful realization. Now old enough to fully understand the pattern, he asked me a question that broke my heart as we were setting up for his space-themed party. "Mommy, why do not Grandma and Grandpa like me?" he asked, his small fingers fidgeting with the planet decorations we were hanging. "Is it because I talk too much about stars? Mason says I am boring." I put down the streamers I was holding and knelt to his level, fighting back tears. I chose my words carefully, wanting to protect him without lying. "Sweetheart, your grandparents and cousins miss out on knowing how amazing you are, but that is their loss, not a reflection of you. Some people just do not know how to appreciate the wonderful things right in front of them." I know he was not fully convinced, but he nodded and went back to hanging paper planets from our ceiling. That year my family did not even pretend they might come. My mother called 2 weeks before to say they had planned a long weekend trip to Florida that could not be changed. The trip had supposedly been on the calendar for months, though this was the first I had heard of it. That night, after the party guests had gone and Noah was asleep surrounded by new space books and rocket models, I cried for the unfairness of it all. My child was bright, kind, and desperately wanted connection with his extended family, yet they consistently chose to exclude him while lavishing attention on his cousins. The dynamic in our family relationships shifted noticeably after that. I began declining invitations to Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings. I made excuses about work deadlines or Noah's school projects. In truth, I could not bear to watch Mason, Isabella, and Grace open mountains of presents at Christmas, while Noah received gift cards or generic toys that showed no knowledge of his interests. My withdrawal prompted angry texts from my mother accusing me of isolating Noah from his family. She seemed genuinely unable to connect her behavior with my response. My brother Andrew called to lecture me about family responsibilities, about how the cousins needed to bond, conveniently ignoring how his children had always treated Noah as an afterthought at best and a nuisance at worst. A particularly painful contrast came during the winter holidays when my parents took all 3 cousins to Disney World as a special grandparent trip. Noah was not invited. When I questioned this, my mother simply said, "We can only handle 3 children at once, Abigail. Perhaps next time." There was never a next time. By Noah's 7th birthday, I had reached my limit. His rocket science party was planned with his school friends and our neighbors in mind. I still sent invitations to my family out of principle, but I had no expectations they would attend. 2 weeks before the party, I decided to directly address the pattern with my family. I invited my parents, Andrew and Jennifer, to coffee while the children were in school. I had practiced what I wanted to say, keeping my tone non-accusatory but firm. "I need to talk about Noah's birthdays," I began once we were all seated. "This will be the 4th year in a row that you have missed his celebration, and he has noticed. He thinks you do not care about him." My mother immediately became defensive. "We have very busy lives, Abigail. We cannot possibly attend every little event." Andrew jumped in before I could respond. "You are being overly sensitive. Kids have dozens of birthdays. Missing a few is not the end of the world." Jennifer at least had the grace to look uncomfortable, but she sided with them as always. "We do care about Noah, but you have to understand that with 3 other children and all their activities, our schedules are packed." My father sat silently through the entire conversation, occasionally nodding along with whatever my mother said. I tried a different approach. "Would you miss Mason's birthday 4 years in a row? Or Isabella's? Or Grace's?" "That is different," my mother replied instantly. "How?" I asked, my voice finally betraying my hurt. "How is it different?" She had no real answer, just vague statements about different circumstances, and how I could not possibly understand the complexities of managing a large family's schedule. The conversation ended with nothing resolved. They promised to try to make Noah's upcoming birthday, but their non-committal tones told me all I needed to know. True to form, none of them showed up. The excuse this time was a last-minute business trip my father had to take, and naturally everyone needed to accompany him for family support. After that, I stopped pushing for family inclusion. Instead, I focused on building a network of people who genuinely cared about Noah. Hannah, my neighbor across the hall, became like an aunt to him. She was a kindergarten teacher who never had children of her own, and delighted in taking Noah to science museums and helping with his experiments. Robert, a fellow graphic designer I often collaborated with, and his wife Sarah became regular fixtures in our lives. They had 2 daughters close to Noah's age, who actually enjoyed his company and never made him feel like an outsider. I struggled with conflicting emotions during this time. I was angry at my family's treatment of Noah, but part of me still yearned for their approval and inclusion. I had been conditioned since childhood to seek their validation, and breaking that pattern proved difficult. Some days I considered cutting contact entirely. Other days I convinced myself that if I just tried harder, they would finally embrace Noah as they had embraced the other grandchildren. For Noah's sake, I put on a brave face. When he asked about his grandparents or cousins, I focused on the positive relationships in his life, rather than dwelling on those who consistently disappointed him. As Noah's 8th birthday approached, I noticed he no longer asked if his grandparents or cousins would attend. The previous 4 years had taught him not to expect them, a painful lesson for a child to learn. His new passion was space science, so we planned a cosmic adventure party with a planetarium theme in our living room. I spent weeks creating a star projector from scratch, using online tutorials, painting glow-in-the-dark constellations on black poster boards, and designing cosmic cupcakes with swirls of blue and purple frosting topped with edible frosting. Glitter. I took on 3 extra design projects to afford a good telescope, the big gift he had been hinting about for months. Noah helped with the preparations, carefully writing out invitations for his school friends and our neighbors. When I asked if he wanted me to invite the family, he shrugged with forced casualness. "You can if you want, but they probably will not come," he said, focusing intently on drawing a perfect Saturn on an invitation card. "They never do." His matter-of-fact acceptance hurt more than tears would have. Still, I sent the invitations to my parents, Andrew and Jennifer. A small, foolish part of me hoped that this year would be different. 2 weeks before the party, my mother's response came via text message. "Sorry, we have important family plans that weekend. We'll try to drop off a gift later." No explanation of what these important plans were. No offer to celebrate on another day. Not even the pretense of regret. Just a dismissal of Noah's special day as inconsequential compared to whatever else they had scheduled. When I told Noah, he nodded with the resigned expression that no 8-year-old should have mastered. "It is okay, Mom. I knew they would not come," he said quietly. "They do not really think of me as part of their family, do they?" I wanted to deny it to offer some comforting fiction, but I could not bring myself to lie to him. Instead, I pulled him into a hug and told him the most important truth. "You and I are a family, Noah. A strong, complete family. And we have Hannah and Robert and Sarah who love you very much. Family is not just about who you are related to, it is about who shows up for you consistently." He seemed to accept this, and we continued with our party preparations. The celebration itself was wonderful. Noah's friends were enthusiastic about the space theme. Hannah brought an amazing astronaut ice sculpture, and Robert's family arrived with thoughtfully chosen gifts that perfectly matched Noah's interests. By all measures, it was a successful birthday. 3 days after the party, I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw what had constituted the important family plans that prevented them from attending Noah's birthday. Jennifer had posted multiple photos of the entire family, including my parents, Andrew, and his family at Disney World. There were pictures of them all wearing matching custom t-shirts, posing with characters, and enjoying special VIP experiences. The caption read, "Best family trip ever, so blessed to spend this time with the people I love most in the world." I zoomed in on one photo that showed Grace Mason and Isabella wearing birthday buttons, though none of them had birthdays that month. Another image showed a special character breakfast with a cake that read, "Happy Family Celebration." They had planned a family vacation deliberately during Noah's birthday weekend. Not only had they excluded us, but they had created a special celebration for the other children during a time when they knew Noah would be hoping for their attendance at his party. As I stared at the pictures, something inside me finally broke. This was not thoughtlessness or poor planning. This was deliberate exclusion. For 5 years, they had chosen to miss every single one of Noah's birthdays while celebrating every minor achievement of his cousins. Before I could decide how to respond, Noah appeared behind me, looking at my phone screen over my shoulder. I tried to close the app, but it was too late. He had seen the family photos, recognized the theme park, understood immediately what it meant. "I get it now," he said, his voice small but eerily calm. "They did not miss my birthday because they were busy. They missed it because they were having more fun without me." I turned to see tears silently streaming down his face, though he was trying hard to maintain composure. In that moment, my heart shattered for him, but it also hardened with resolve. I pulled him into my arms as he finally allowed himself to cry properly, his small body shaking with sobs. "They do not deserve you, Noah," I whispered fiercely. "Not for 1 second. You are smart and kind and amazing, and if they cannot see that, it is their tremendous loss." He cried himself to sleep that night, curled against me on the couch. As I watched his tear-stained face in repose, something shifted permanently inside me. The daughter who had spent decades seeking approval, making excuses, and accepting scraps of attention died that night. In her place stood a mother bear prepared to protect her cub at all costs. I made a decision as Noah slept. I would no longer subject him to the pain of rejection from people who clearly did not value him. I would no longer make excuses for inexcusable behavior. I would no longer pretend that we were part of a loving extended family when all evidence pointed to the contrary. Most importantly, I would show Noah that we had worth, that we deserved respect, and that it was okay to draw boundaries against people who hurt us, even if those people were family. The actual birthday celebration the next day was genuinely joyful despite the revelations. Hannah outdid herself with space-themed games. Robert brought a small drone for the kids to experiment with, and Noah's school friends were enthusiastic and kind. My son was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about him, who showed up, not out of obligation but out of love. As I watched him laughing with his friends, explaining the constellations he had painted and demonstrating his new telescope, I realized we did not need my family's approval or inclusion. We had built something beautiful on our own, a community of chosen family who valued Noah for exactly who he was. That night, as I tucked an exhausted but happy Noah into bed, he looked up at me with clear eyes. "Today was the best birthday ever, Mom," he said, "with the people who really want to be here." Out of the mouths of babes comes wisdom that adults struggle years to achieve. The annual Parker family cabin trip had been a tradition for 15 years. My parents had purchased a luxury mountain retreat when Andrew graduated college, and every summer since then, the entire family gathered for a week of high-end relaxation. The cabin itself was more of a mountain mansion with 6 bedrooms, a game room, indoor pool, and spectacular views. These trips were never the restful vacations they pretended to be. They were carefully orchestrated performances of family harmony, complete with matching outfits for photos, scheduled activities, and mandatory family dinners where my mother held court. Behind the scenes were the usual dynamics, expensive gifts for Mason, Isabella, and Grace, while Noah was tolerated at best. The financial arrangement for these trips had always been a point of contention. Despite my parents being wealthy enough to cover the expenses, they insisted on a tradition of everyone chipping in. Andrew and Jennifer, with their comfortable dual incomes, could easily afford their portions. I, however, had to save all year or put the amount on credit cards to be paid off slowly over the following months. Last year's trip had been particularly difficult. Noah, then 7, had been excited about fishing in the lake with his grandfather, an activity Richard had promised. When the day came, Richard took Mason and Grace, instead claiming there was not enough room in the boat for Noah. Later, Mason had pushed Noah into the pool when he was still fully dressed, ruining the book he had been reading. When I confronted Elizabeth about it, she laughed it off as kids being kids. 4 days after Noah's 8th birthday party, my phone pinged with a text message from my mother. "We need your $2,700 for the cabin trip by Friday. Everyone is chipping in. Please confirm." No hello. No questions about Noah's birthday that they had missed. No acknowledgement of the Disney trip they had taken instead. Just a demand for money delivered with the expectation of immediate compliance. I stared at the message, feeling a surge of emotions. Shock at the audacity, anger at the dismissive tone, hurt that not even a pretense of interest in Noah's birthday was offered. But mostly I felt a dawning realization about just how one-sided this relationship had become. For years, I had paid thousands of dollars to participate in family vacations where Noah was deliberately excluded from activities where he was treated as an unwelcome addition rather than a beloved grandson and cousin. I had drained my savings and taken on debt to maintain the illusion that we were part of this family, all while watching Noah suffer the small cruelties of being the outsider. They had skipped his birthday again to take a lavish Disney vacation without us. They had created special celebrations for his cousins during that time. And now, without so much as a token acknowledgement of that hurt, they expected me to hand over nearly $3,000 I did not have for the privilege of another week of watching my child be marginalized. I thought back to the previous summer when Noah had spent an entire day building an elaborate sandcastle at the lake shore. He had worked on it for hours, carefully creating turrets and moats. When he invited his cousins to see it, they deliberately stomped through it, destroying his work. My sister Jennifer had witnessed the whole thing and simply called out, "Do not track sand into the cabin, kids." Not a word of reprimand for the deliberate destruction, not a moment of empathy for Noah's tears. When I confronted her later, she had shrugged and said, "He needs to toughen up. The world is not going to handle him with kid gloves just because he is sensitive." My first instinct was to politely decline the invitation to make an excuse about work commitments or financial constraints. I drafted a message explaining that we would not be able to attend this year, keeping my tone neutral and non-confrontational as I had been conditioned to do. But before I could send it, another text arrived, this one from my mother again. "Your father has already made the deposit. Everyone needs to pay their share. Let me know when you have sent the money." The presumption stunned me. There had been no discussion, no checking if the dates worked for me, no question of whether I could afford it this year, just an expectation that I would comply as I always had. I did not respond immediately. I needed time to process my thoughts and decide on the right approach. But the next morning I received a text from my brother Andrew. "Mom says you have not confirmed for the cabin trip. This is a family tradition, Abigail. Noah needs to spend time with his cousins and we all need to do our part. The money is due Friday." His message carried the familiar tone of superiority he had perfected over the years, the implication that I was somehow failing in my family duties by not immediately agreeing to their demands. The irony of him suddenly being concerned about Noah spending time with cousins who had consistently treated him poorly was not lost on me. As I stared at these messages, something crystallized in my mind. For years, I had been trying to buy my son's acceptance into a family that clearly did not want him. I had been paying thousands of dollars for the privilege of watching him be hurt repeatedly, and I had been doing this out of some misguided hope that eventually they would see his worth and embrace him. It was time to stop. It was time to establish boundaries that protected both Noah and myself. It was time to show my son that we deserved better treatment than what we had been accepting. I made my decision. Instead of sending a polite refusal or making excuses, I opened my Venmo app and sent my mother exactly $1. In the memo field, I wrote, simply, "Wrong guest list." Then I took more decisive action. I logged into the joint credit card accounts that had been set up years ago when I occasionally helped manage my parents' online shopping. I removed my name as an authorized user and contacted the credit card company to ensure I could no longer be held responsible for any charges. I accessed the Shared Family Vacation Fund account, where small amounts were automatically deposited throughout the year to cover trips like the cabin rental, and removed my name and contribution access. Finally, I went through recent transactions on the family accounts and flagged several charges from the Disney trip as unauthorized since they had been partially made using the family vacation fund that I had contributed to under the profits. Assumption it was for inclusive family activities. As I completed these actions, I felt a strange mixture of anxiety and liberation. I had never stood up to my family in such a direct way before. I had always been the peacekeeper, the one who adjusted her expectations and swallowed her hurt for the sake of harmony. But harmony built on inequality and deliberate exclusion was not worth preserving. I turned off my phone knowing the reactions would be swift and angry. I needed time to center myself before facing the storm I had just unleashed. When I turned my phone back on several hours later, it was flooded with notifications. Multiple missed calls from my mother, father, brother, and sister. Voicemails ranging from confused to furious. Text message demanding explanation. The most revealing was from my mother. "What do you think you are doing? You are ruining the family vacation. Call me immediately." No mention of Noah's birthday they had skipped. No acknowledgement of the Disney trip they had taken instead. No recognition of the pattern of exclusion that had led to this moment. Just outrage that I had finally refused to play by their rules. I did not call back. Instead, I sent a brief text to the family group chat. "After 5 years of you missing Noah's birthdays while celebrating every event for his cousins, I have decided we will not be attending or contributing to family gatherings where we are clearly unwanted. Please enjoy your cabin trip without us." Then I silenced the thread and spent the evening building a model rocket with Noah feeling lighter than I had in years. The financial chaos I had created in the Parker family became apparent within days. My actions had effectively frozen several shared accounts and thrown their carefully planned cabin vacation into disarray. The $10,000 deposit my father had placed was non-refundable, and without my contribution and with the frozen accounts, they were scrambling to cover the full amount due. Multiple angry text messages informed me of this predicament, each one more accusatory than the last. My mother's communications ranged from guilt-tripping. "My heart condition is acting up from this stress," to outright threats. "You will regret damaging this family this way." My brother Andrew sent detailed breakdowns of the financial impact as if I was unaware of what I had done. My sister Jennifer vacillated between playing peacemaker. "Please just talk to Mom and Dad. They are really upset," and joining the chorus of accusation. "How could you be so selfish? This affects all of us, not just you." Through it all, I maintained my silence. I had said what needed to be said, and years of experience had taught me that trying to explain my feelings to them was futile. They had never truly listened before, and they were not listening now. They were reacting to the inconvenience I had caused, not reflecting on the years of hurt that had preceded it. 3 days after my initial actions, Andrew called an emergency family meeting, excluding me, of course. According to the angry text I received afterward, they had collectively decided to report the disputed charges as fraudulent to the credit card companies and bank. Andrew, with his background in finance, had convinced them that this was the fastest way to unfreeze the accounts and recover the money. What they failed to consider was that I had been an authorized user on those accounts. I had documentation of my contributions to the family vacation fund. I had records of every transaction I had disputed, and the legitimate reasons for those disputes. They were not reporting actual fraud. They were attempting to use the fraud reporting system to punish me for standing up to them. Their plan backfired spectacularly. The day after they filed the reports, I received a call from Patricia in the security department of our bank. "Miss Parker, this is Patricia from First National Bank's security team. We have received some concerning reports about activity on joint accounts you are connected with. Do you have a few minutes to discuss this?" Her tone was professional but warm, and I found myself explaining the situation with more candor than I had intended. I detailed the years of exclusion Noah had experienced, the pattern of missed birthdays culminating in the Disney trip deliberately scheduled during his most recent celebration, and my decision to remove myself from family financial entanglements as a result. I shared documentation of my authorized access to the accounts, proof of my contributions, and evidence that the disputed charges were for a trip from which Noah and I had been deliberately excluded, despite having contributed to the fund that partially paid for it. Patricia listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she was silent for a moment before speaking. "Miss Parker, thank you for explaining this situation so thoroughly. While I cannot comment on family dynamics, I can assure you that what you have described does not constitute bank fraud. You had authorized access to these accounts, and your disputes appear to be legitimate based on the documentation you have provided." I smiled as I replied, "This is not fraud. This is a boundary they have never respected." Patricia confirmed that the bank would contact my parents to explain that their fraud report was invalid and that they would need to resolve this as a family matter, rather than a banking issue. She also helped me ensure that my financial separation from the family accounts was complete and properly documented to prevent future issues. The following day, I received a terse text from my father, the first direct communication from him in this entire ordeal. "Family meeting. Our house. Sunday at 2 p.m. Come alone." The command to come alone bothered me. Noah was the center of this conflict, yet they wanted to ensure he was not present to witness their behavior or my defense of him. Still, I agreed to the meeting, believing it was time to directly address the years of hurt. That Sunday, I arrived at my parents' sprawling colonial house feeling strangely calm. The anxiety that had typically accompanied family confrontations was absent, replaced by a steady resolve. I had nothing to lose anymore. They had already shown me exactly where Noah and I stood in their priorities. When I entered the formal living room, they were all waiting, arranged like a tribunal. My parents sat on the large sofa, my father's face stern, my mother's tearful, but with an underlying hardness I recognized all too well. Andrew and Elizabeth occupied the love seat, while Jennifer and Michael stood by the fireplace. The room had the tense atmosphere of an intervention, which I supposed it was, though not in the way they intended. "You have put this family through hell this week," my mother began without preamble. "The bank called us like we were criminals. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. Andrew had to take time off work to sort out this mess. What do you have to say for yourself?" I sat in the single armchair across from them, maintaining eye contact. "What would you like me to address first? The fact that you have missed Noah's birthday 5 years in a row, the Disney trip you took during his most recent birthday, or the expectation that I would pay nearly $3,000 for vacation after being treated this way?" That set off an explosion of responses. Andrew accused me of being perpetually oversensitive. Jennifer insisted they had never intentionally missed Noah's birthdays, they were just busy with 3 other children. My mother claimed I was exaggerating the situation to justify my financial sabotage. My father remained silent, as he always did during family conflicts, though I noticed him watching me with an expression I could not quite read. When there was finally a break in their overlapping accusations, I pulled out my phone and connected it to their television using the casting feature. I had come prepared. "Let me show you something," I said calmly. On the screen appeared a timeline I had created documenting 5 years of Noah's birthdays. For each one, I had compiled the invitations sent to the family, their response or excuse, and then social media posts or photos showing what they had actually been doing on those days. The evidence was damning when presented so systematically. Year 1 claimed to have a corporate event actually at a water park celebrating Mason's first soccer game. Year 2 claimed to have the flu actually at a restaurant for adults' night out. Year 3 claimed to have a long-planned Florida trip actually at a local wine festival, according to my mother's own Facebook check-in. Year 4 claimed to have a business trip actually at Isabella's dance recital followed by a celebration dinner. Year 5, no excuse offered, just important family plans, which turned out to be a Disney World trip with matching shirts and a special celebration cake. The room fell silent as the images scrolled across the screen. Jennifer looked down at her hands. My father shifted uncomfortably. Only Andrew and my mother maintained their defiant expressions. "Noah is 8 years old," I continued into the silence. "For 5 years he has watched you celebrate every achievement, birthday and milestone for Mason, Isabella, and Grace while consistently ignoring his. He has tried so hard to connect with all of you, to share his interests and accomplishments, only to be treated as an afterthought at best and an inconvenience at worst." My mother started to speak, but I held up my hand. "I am not finished. I have spent years making excuses for all of you, both to Noah and to myself. I have drained my savings and taken on debt to participate in family events where my child was made to feel unwelcome. I have watched him learn year by year that he is somehow less worthy of love and attention than his cousins, and I have finally reached my limit." I stood up, feeling stronger with each word. "My son has learned that he does not matter to this family, but I will not let him learn that he does not matter to me. I will not continue to subject him to your conditional acceptance or pay thousands of dollars for the privilege of watching him be hurt. So yes, I sent $1 and blocked the accounts. Yes, I disputed charges for a trip that deliberately excluded us while using funds I had contributed. And no, I am not sorry." The room erupted again, accusations flying. I was creating drama. I was misinterpreting innocent scheduling conflicts. I was turning Noah against the family. I was being unreasonable. But I noticed that no one, not one person, directly addressed the evidence I had presented or offered a genuine apology for the pattern it revealed. Then, unexpectedly, my father cleared his throat. The room fell silent immediately, a testament to his rarely exercised authority in family matters. "Abigail has a point," he said quietly. "We have missed every one of Noah's birthdays." I had not realized the pattern until seeing it laid out this way. My mother turned to him in shock. "Richard, you cannot possibly be taking her side in this." "I am not taking sides, Deborah. I am acknowledging facts." He turned to me, his expression troubled. "I did not realize how this looked from your perspective. Or from Noah's." My brother Andrew jumped in. "Dad, she is manipulating the situation. Those were all legitimate conflicts. We cannot arrange our entire lives around her schedule." My sister Jennifer surprisingly spoke up next. Her voice was small but clear. "Actually, I do feel bad about the Disney trip. We did plan it knowing it was Noah's birthday weekend. I just went along with it because Mom said it was the only time that worked for everyone." This admission seemed to shift the energy in the room. My mother looked betrayed. My father looked thoughtful. Andrew looked increasingly uncomfortable as the united front began to crumble. For the first time, I saw my family split into those who were capable of self-reflection and those who were not. My father and Jennifer showed glimmers of understanding, while my mother and brother doubled down on their defensiveness. Michael, Jennifer's husband, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "Look, I think we all need to acknowledge that there has been a pattern here, intended or not. If one of our kids was consistently excluded the way Noah has been, I would be upset too." Elizabeth, Andrew's wife, still would not meet my eyes, but she nodded slightly at Michael's words. The meeting continued for another hour, cycling through accusations, defenses, and occasional moments of genuine reflection. No consensus was reached, no grand reconciliation achieved, but something had shifted. The family was no longer united against me. The evidence had been too clear, the pattern too obvious to completely deny. As I prepared to leave, my father approached me privately while the others were engaged in heated discussion. "I am sorry, Abigail," he said quietly. "I should have paid more attention. I should have seen what was happening." It was not a complete acknowledgement of the hurt caused, but it was more than I had expected from him. I nodded, not quite ready to accept the apology but recognizing the effort it represented. "Think about whether you want Noah to know his grandfather," he added. "I would like the chance to do better." "I will think about it," I promised. "But it would have to be on terms that protect Noah from further hurt." As I drove home, I felt drained but also strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, I had spoken my truth without filtering it to maintain family harmony. I had stood up for my son and for myself. And while the outcome remained uncertain, something fundamental had changed. I was no longer the peacekeeper willing to accept scraps of attention and respect. I was a mother bear who had shown her teeth, and they would never underestimate me again. The aftermath of the family meeting brought both unexpected challenges and surprising developments. The family had fractured into distinct camps, a division I had never witnessed before in our typically unified front against any dissent. My father, in an unprecedented move, began reaching out to me directly. His texts were awkward but sincere, asking about Noah's interests and activities. He sent an astronomy book to our apartment with a handwritten note apologizing for missing Noah's birthday and expressing hope that they might share an interest in space together. Jennifer approached me separately, tearfully, acknowledging that she had gone along with excluding Noah to avoid conflict with our mother. She confessed that Grace had often asked why her cousin Noah was not included in family events, and she had never had a good answer. My mother remained rigid in her position that I had overreacted and damaged the family unnecessarily. She sent occasional text messages that oscillated between guilt trips about family traditions being ruined and demands that I apologize for my financial actions. I responded politely but firmly, maintaining the boundaries I had established. Andrew was perhaps the most resistant to change. He viewed my actions as a direct challenge to the family hierarchy in which he had always enjoyed a privileged position. He stopped communicating with me entirely, and through Jennifer, I learned he had forbidden Elizabeth from reaching out as well. The cabin trip was rescheduled for later in the summer, with my parents covering the portion I would have contributed. I was neither invited nor did I expect to be. Some bridges would take longer to rebuild if they ever could be. In the weeks that followed, I experienced a roller coaster of emotions. There were days of intense anger, when I would remember all the times Noah had been hurt, all the excuses I had accepted, all the money I had spent trying to buy acceptance from people who did not value us. On these days, I would write long, scathing emails that I never sent, pouring out years of accumulated hurt and resentment. There were days of profound sadness, mourning the family relationships I had always hoped for but never truly had. I grieved for the cousins Noah might have been close to in different circumstances, for the grandparent relationships that should have been sources of unconditional love. There were even occasional days of doubt when the lifetime of conditioning would resurface, and I would question whether I had been too harsh, too unforgiving. On these days, Hannah would remind me of what Noah had endured, and how much happier he seemed since we had established clearer boundaries. I began attending a support group for single parents, finding solace in the stories of others who had navigated complex family dynamics while protecting their children. The group helped me recognize that my actions had not been selfish or vindictive, but necessary steps to break a damaging pattern. Noah, for his part, seemed to flourish in the aftermath of these changes. Without the constant undercurrent of rejection from his extended family, he became more confident in school and social situations. He spoke more openly about his feelings, no longer afraid that expressing hurt or disappointment would somehow make him less lovable. We focused on building new traditions and strengthening our chosen family connections. Hannah became such a consistent presence in our lives that Noah began calling her Aunt Hannah without prompting. Robert and Sarah included us in their family game nights and weekend outings, creating a warm circle of connection that Noah thrived within. Margaret, Noah's third-grade teacher, noticed the positive changes in him and became another supportive adult in his life. She encouraged his scientific interests and recommended him for a weekend STEM program where he excelled and made new friends who shared his passions. When Noah's 9th birthday approached, I planned a space observatory visit with his closest friends, deliberately keeping it intimate and meaningful rather than trying to create an elaborate event. To my surprise, 2 weeks before the date, I received separate texts from my father and Jennifer asking if they could attend and bring gifts. I discussed it carefully with Noah, making it clear that the choice was entirely his and that I would support whatever he decided. After thoughtful consideration, he agreed they could come, but with a maturity beyond his years added, "But I do not want to get my hopes up too much, Mom." I set clear expectations with my father and Jennifer. If they committed to attending, they needed to follow through this time. No last-minute cancellations, no abbreviated appearances. Noah deserved better than more disappointment. On the day of his birthday celebration, my father arrived 30 minutes early, carrying a professionally wrapped package and looking uncharacteristically nervous. Jennifer, Michael, and Grace came shortly after, Grace clutching a handmade card. My mother and Andrew's family were notably absent, having declined the invitation. Noah was initially reserved with them, a protective mechanism he had developed over years of disappointment. But as the day progressed, and they showed genuine interest in his space, knowledge, and friends, he gradually warmed up. When he unwrapped the telescope accessories from my father and the astronomy camp registration from Jennifer, his cautious smile grew more genuine. It was not a perfect reconciliation, nor did it erase the years of hurt, but it was a beginning, a small step toward healing the wounds that had been inflicted. My father, in a quiet moment, told me he regretted allowing my mother to dictate family relationships for so many years. Jennifer admitted she had always admired my independence, but had been afraid to break ranks with the family expectations. As for me, the most profound change came in how I viewed myself and my role in relationships. I had spent most of my life as the family peacekeeper, the one who accommodated, apologized, and adjusted to maintain harmony at any cost. Standing firm in my boundaries had been terrifying initially, but the aftermath had been transformative. I became more confident in all aspects of my life. At work, I began negotiating better rates for my design projects and turning down clients who undervalued my time. I established a portfolio website that attracted higher quality work, allowing me to be more selective and ultimately more financially stable. I no longer felt guilty for having needs or setting limits. I recognized that healthy relationships required mutual respect and consideration, not one person constantly compromising to please others. This awareness extended beyond family to friendships and even to a cautious foray into dating, something I had avoided since Thomas left. For Noah, perhaps the most important lesson was watching his mother stand up for both of us. He observed firsthand that we deserved respect, that love should not be conditional, and that sometimes protecting yourself from harm is more important than maintaining toxic relationships, even with family. He began applying these lessons in his own life, standing up to a classmate who had been taking his lunch money and reporting it to his teacher instead of suffering in silence. He became more selective about friendships, gravitating toward children who treated him kindly rather than desperately trying to please those who did not. His academic performance, already strong, improved further as he channeled his energy into interests and relationships that nurtured him rather than depleting him emotionally. His science fair project on asteroid detection won first place at the school level and advanced to the district competition. Perhaps the most powerful lesson I learned through this experience was that family is not defined solely by blood relations. Family consists of the people who show up consistently, who celebrate your joys and comfort your sorrows, who value you for exactly who you are rather than who they wish you would be. Hannah, Robert, Sarah, and the other caring adults in our lives had demonstrated more genuine family love than many of our blood relatives. They had no obligation to care for us, yet they chose to include us in their lives and treated Noah with the kindness and attention he deserved. My relationship with my extended family continues to evolve. My father and Jennifer make regular efforts to connect with Noah, though there are still missteps and moments of tension. My mother occasionally reaches out, though her communications typically carry undertones of martyrdom and blame rather than genuine reconciliation. Andrew remains distant, still viewing my boundary setting as a betrayal of family loyalty. I have learned to accept that some relationships may never be what I hoped for, and that is okay. Not every family fracture can or should be repaired, particularly when the pattern of harm continues. Sometimes the healthiest choice is to create distance and build connections elsewhere. As for the shared financial accounts and cabin trips, I have maintained my separation from these entanglements. I politely decline invitations to contribute to joint gifts or vacations, choosing instead to decide independently how and when we participate in family events. This financial independence has been another form of liberation, removing a tool that was often used to enforce compliance with family expectations. The journey of healing continues for both Noah and me. There are still difficult days, still moments when old hurts resurface. But we face them together stronger for having established clear boundaries and surrounded ourselves with genuine love and support. I have learned that boundaries are not walls meant to keep people out, but rather gates that allow you to control what influences enter your life. They are not acts of hostility, but of self-preservation and ultimately self-respect. And sometimes setting a boundary is the greatest gift you can give your child, showing them through action rather than words that they deserve to be valued, respected, and truly loved. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members to protect yourself or your children? I would love to hear about your experiences in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to stand up for themselves and their children, even when it means confronting family. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the family we choose is more healing than the family we were born into.